iPad, and you can see on here that I'm working in the web at the moment. I've signed in through Safari. If I come out of there, you'll see I've got the Tapestry app there, and I'm going to put pin number in there for that person. And in this account, we've got some mocked up observations. I'm just going to mock up another observation in here. Top left, you'll see a plus button. I'm going to press that. Let's do that again. There we go. And you'll see I'm in the process of mocking up an observation here. And this is going to be on, here it goes, block building. Okay. Now I could have typed that with the on-screen keyboard. I'm just trying to suggest that typing notes with your voice can be, and of course, busy classrooms is never going to work as well as sitting in quiet, but it is definitely something to consider. Now here, let's forget the notes for a moment. Going down here, you can see that I've got options for bringing media into my observation. I can take a picture live if I press that button on the left, or record video live, but again, I would suggest recording the video with the camera app is a better way to go than directly in here. If I add from the library, I can tap photos that I want. I can choose photos that are relevant to my observation, and I can put lots of pictures in there if I wish. I can have an observation that shows a process from the beginning to the middle to the end. It can show change, it can show outcome, it can show different parts of that process. Of course, in this one, you've got a bit of building block action. Let's just consider this as an observation. So here I go again. I'm going to start by typing these children had a great time experimenting with the building blocks and discussing their structures. Full stop. The conversation led on to the colour of the building blocks and which colour they would prefer to make their structure from. Full stop. The activity lasted for a good 5 minutes, comma. It would be something great to return to at a later point, full stop. Okay, so I've just ad-libbed a bit of some notes that might go into an observation. And obviously what you put into your notes is up to you. And with all of these observations, of course, it's worth remembering there's no right or wrong about picture content or how long your notes are. Sometimes you might have an observation which doesn't have much written into the notes at all. Sometimes you might have an observation where there's just written notes and only one picture, or just written notes and no pictures at all. Something might have happened in a class that's worth recording as an observation, but you haven't got any photos of it because you didn't have camera out and it just happened. So it's worth remembering that observations don't have to have pictures in. They don't have to have notes in. I can choose children for the observation from here where it says children. If I go to pick children, now you'll see in here, down the bottom there, it says no filters. Now, something that's nice in this app, if you're in a setting that's got loads and loads and loads of children in it, is that you can filter to different groups, different cohorts, whatever it might be, and the app will remember your filtering from before. So let's say you're in a massive preschool setting with lots of different rooms of children of different ages. If you filtered out the ones that you might never work with at all, then they're not going to appear on your list. So that's a great thing about using the filters. Let's choose a few children here. I'm going to choose 4 children and imagine that they were the children in here. and that makes it a group observation. Now, group observations can be handled in a slightly different way by Tapestry. Often settings changes setting in Tapestry so that relatives can't comment on a group observation. But you can also later on take your group observation and split it into separate observations. So that's also something that schools and nurseries find useful, really as a very efficient, effective way to produce lots of observations, but using the same picture material, possibly using the same notes. Moving on down here, you've got the flags. Now the flags are only going to be here if they've been enabled. You'll see there's no assessments here anymore because Tapestry has moved from the older stuff generally being in assessments and the newer framework related materials being in flags. Now flags, if I go to pick flags, you'll see some of the ones enabled there. I'm looking for EYFS 2021, and you'll see in here you've got the those 7 main strands that appear in the development matters document. But you'll also see that if I tap on one of these, that in orange it does have them broken down, and so this is so that if you're a preschool or nursery using birth to 5, you can use the subcategories there in orange if you should want to. If you don't want to use those subcategories, you don't have to use them. Okay, so you can just go for physical development, and I tap that box there. It's really up to you. If you wanted to completely get rid of the flags that are in orange, then there's a way you can do that by entering them into Tapestry manually, because it lets you make your own set of flags now. But this is the system that's really replacing what a lot of settings used to do with their age bandings. And as you can see, it's a far more basic system, but some would also say a much more appropriate system for tracking and sort of cataloging what observations were and how they worked. So let's put that one down as a communication and language. Let's also put it down as an understanding the world. And that might be it for my system for flags. So it just allows me to catalogue what's going on. Obviously, you've got literacy and maths there. As your year goes on and you might do more maths type content, then obviously flagging an observation as maths, can put all of that math stuff together, and you can see that there'll be purpose for that. You will be able to look back on all of the observations that you've created and filter them by their flags, and so it allows you to look back and think about those areas separately. Hope that makes sense. I'm going to come out of here in just a moment and look in the chat, or if you want to unmute and ask me a question at this point, you are very, very welcome. Let's just upload this one. So top right, upload, and you'll see that's going to go in there. You can see it's got an O next to it in here, which means it's an observation. If you look down my list on the left, you'll see that there are some, there's a memo in there, which is different. It's a message to parents, but it's worth talking about that and saying that, that's something that's in there and can be useful. So it's an observation. See it there on the right, and you'll see that it's not in journal. And again, it's worth going over this. The observations, when they're first created, as a default, it doesn't put them into the child's journal. So it's putting them in a state where they're saved, but they're there to be approved. So you might have a situation where teaching assistants are producing observations but you want them to not be in the journal, and you don't want your teaching assistant to be able to put them in the journal. You want to be the person who says, okay, that one's all right, that one's all right, that one's all right. That one I'm going to go to edit on and change something in the text because that's not quite right. And then I'm going to put it into the journal. You'll see that here, down there, it says add to journal in the middle down at the bottom, add to journal. And it's now gone in. Now, once it's gone into the journal, that means that relatives of that child, or in this case of these 4 children, would be able to see that observation. So just be aware, once it's gone in the journal, it's out there for those relatives to see. I did talk about splitting observation. I don't believe you can do that in the app yet, even though that is on the list of things for them to put in there. Splitting observations happens on the web. If I go back to the web, you'll see there is my observation. Of course, you've got a button there that says add observation, so you can do all of that work in here if you wish. And if I go to the cog next to that observation, you'll see I've got a few options there, including, you'll see reflect there that we'll talk about a little bit later. And I can split that group observation. I've got a nice button at the top here that will split all of them. I can tap that, and so that's done. And that means you can individualize your observations should you wish to. Now, possibly with the new framework, that's not such a big deal because people were splitting observations in the past and then tagging different assessment age bands to them, and that's not something that you're necessarily going to be doing now. Still, it can be useful at times to be able to work in that way. Right, we've been through the observation process there. I just wanted to show the flags in action, really.